Disney Plus is not important in the sense that it completely changed the streaming game forever. But the creation of it is important because of the massive library of content that they hold. Disney owns a powerhouse of studios, including Lucasfilms, Marvel, and Pixar. And the hype around Disney was only growing at the time of Disney Plus's release date. On April 26th, Marvel's Avengers Endgame would release, and it would become the highest grossing movie of all time, surpassing Avatar, making $2.798 billion US. Later in that same year, Pixar would reach the final conclusion to the Toy Story saga, making Toy Story 4 a cinematic masterpiece. It would go on to make $1.073 billion in June. The launch of Disney Plus would be in the middle of that and the newest Star Wars movie, The Rise of the Skywalker. Although, like every Star Wars movie, the fans would be very angry at it, but it would still gross $1.074 billion. And this all happened in 2019. Disney Plus would be a massive success on launch. It had 10 million people sign up for the free original trial. 10 million people. That number was the projected amount that the whole site would get in a year. It reached in a day. And since Disney Plus's released, its new shows had weekly releases instead of everything dropping all at once like Netflix does. And this weekly schedule means that people would have to continue their subscription if they want to continue watching a show. The subscription cost for Disney Plus was $7 a month, Netflix costs $9, and Hulu costs $6. Disney Plus is right in the middle of those two. The Disney Plus original shows that it had on launch were a documentary about Jeff Goldblum, a show with a ridiculously long name, High School Musical, the musical, the series, and the shining star, The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian would quickly become one of the most in-demand shows at this time, only rivaled by Netflix's The Witcher. But as Netflix happens, The Witcher was all dropped at once. People were more engaged with The Mandalorian as time went on, because episodes were dropping weekly. People had to stay invested. You didn't get to binge-watch the whole story at once like you could with The Witcher. And this new success was a driving factor in why many people renewed their subscription after the free trial, specifically to watch The Mandalorian. And there are many reasons as to why The Mandalorian was a big success. The show was written really, really well, which is obviously a very big one. However, at this point, new Star Wars content was what people craved, and then after Rise of the Skywalker came out, and it left a lot of people disappointed, having this reprieve of good content made people want it even more, and then the famous Baby Yoda, Grogu. And the successes that Disney Plus had that caused a large influx of subscriptions were obviously The Mandalorian, Hamilton getting put on Disney Plus, and the new Mulan. Once The Mandalorian Season 1 had ended, plenty of people tweeted about canceling their membership, since the only show that they were watching was done. It wasn't airing anymore. No new episodes were coming out at that point. And to show what I mean, I have made a very accurate and professional graph of the situation that we are dealing with. Season 2 of this hit show was released October 30th of this year, 2020. And this new season had increased signups for the site 3.1 times the predicted number that they were expecting in that month alone. And it was the amount of signups for the Mandalorian Season 2 drop was 1.5 times more than the whole of Mulan had for the site. Disney has an incredibly marketable content, but a lot of its biggest hits were assigned to other streaming services. At the launch of Disney Plus, Avengers Endgame, Avengers Infinity War, and Thor Ragnarok were all still on Netflix. Something else that Disney Plus was critiqued for was its interface. It was rather hard to navigate, and it lacked key features like an autoplay and a really bad and struggling continue watching section. It was a mess, but it was still a success because everyone who went on the site knew what they wanted to watch. The library was vast, but it was really hard to find new shows, which is why it worked if you knew what you wanted to watch. Most people got Disney Plus for one hit of nostalgia of watching an old Disney show or movie, and then it was to watch The Mandalorian, all of which you could just type and then watch it weekly by weekly. You could just type in The Mandalorian. Disney Plus recently has announced a very large content drop with a multitude of Marvel shows. That being WandaVision, Loki, Captain America and the Winter Soldier, the show, not the movie. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it's a mess. However, this is enough to hook Marvel fans in. Now that they've all probably seen the movies, unless they want to rewatch them, there's no point in getting it. If you're just strictly a Marvel fan, you already know what happens in the movies. But having all of these shows with signed actors like Tom Hiddleston still being Loki will cause those fans to be like, yes, let me get Disney Plus, let me watch these shows. Marvel fans especially are lacking content right now, considering 2020 hasn't released a Marvel movie at all, which is a first. They've been releasing at least one movie a year for so long now. And on the Star Wars side, the other biggest factor keeping fans involved, we learned that Obi-Wan Kenobi is getting his own series, with Hayden Christensen reprising his role as Anakin Skywalker / Darth Vader in it, which is amazing. Fan favorite Ahsoka from the Clone Wars is getting her own show. However, it's going to be based off the live action one, as we've seen in the Mandalorian episode with her in it, and a few more spin-off shows of The Mandalorian and the Clone Wars that had 7 seasons, which was all amazing. And with how good The Mandalorian is, there's no doubt that there will be pressure on the company to make these shows just as good, since we do have proof that it can be done. And it's just a matter of time whether we learn if it can live up to it. Each named title could be a hit. Obviously, the Star Wars fans will hate all of it. That's just to be expected. However, the Marvel shows have a big chance of being a success, at least within the Marvel community, or the people who just love all the Marvel movies indefinitely. These shows are definitely going to be something that hits well for them. I don't see how they could completely fail as fan service for fans. And they're putting a lot of money, as I mentioned earlier. They're still getting like the same actors, like Elizabeth Olsen as Scarlet Witch and Tom Hiddleston as Loki and whatnot. So they're pumping a lot of money into these actors and actresses to keep their roles. So I just hope they put the same amount of money into good writers. And these are essentially going to be Disney originals. And if we compare that to Netflix's original shows, which are a big hit or miss, sometimes they produce amazing content, like the aforementioned The Witcher or Queen's Gambit. And then we get things like Ragnarok, and them trying to revive Full House? What? And a lot of the shows they even have, whether it's widely liked or widely disliked, some of it's just the fan base itself just either hates it or loves it, like Big Mouth. A lot of people think it's kind of funny, and a lot of people just hate it, and it's a mess. It's a mess. And Amazon Prime pretty much only has The Boys. It's the only thing I've heard people talk about good coming from it, and that has been a hit. HBO obviously had Game of Thrones before the finale. That was really, really good. The show before the finale, not the finale. And Chernobyl. And I don't think I can name a single Hulu original show that I've heard of without looking for one. And Netflix has the benefit of being able to hype up and promote things like Stranger Things and Daredevil and The Witcher, while being able to push aside its lesser liked content and bury it beneath the good. And Disney Plus right now pretty much only has The Mandalorian, but with what we've seen, it has a high chance of producing something great with all of its other signed content. However, it's unsure of how much we can actually accredit to Disney themselves or the individual companies. As I mentioned, two of the biggest things, and the studios that are producing shows are Marvel and Star Wars, which are just companies under the Disney logo. They're not Disney itself. Disney itself has been producing questionable content. By questionable, I don't mean like questionable. It's just like, why? Like High School Musical, the series, which I've watched and enjoyed, but like, why? For a few documentaries that just don't seem interesting at all. Disney Plus has pretty much only stepped up with The Mandalorian right now, and these things are going to be the driving factor of why people get Disney Plus, these other shows. obviously this nostalgia factor is a factor of it all. People wanting to rewatch something like Wizards of Waverly Place or Hannah Montana. But you would just get people signing up once, binging it all in a month or in a free trial, and then just canceling it, and that's it. So they really have to make sure that these shows either appease the fans and just being something mindlessly entertaining, or actually good like The Mandalorian. And there is potential for any of these shows to just pop off and just be unexpectedly good. And if the site just gets a slight redesign that can make it easier to navigate and can make the site actually good, I might put it up there with, Netflix, which has a very easily comprehensive layout, filters content for you, sifts through the poster art to try and personalize the content to get you to click on it. And Netflix has a very wide array of content, how Disney is mostly kid-friendly or PG-13, whereas Netflix has the ability to be kind of gory in some aspects, which there's reason for both to be successful. And with nerd culture just becoming culture at this point, and the popularization of both Disney's prominent things, Marvel and Star Wars, being put into the limelight, it's just, they have to make sure these shows are good. If they come out and it's another like Iron Fist that's just bad, or Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, which just are rarely memorable, it wouldn't look good for DisneyPlus. And those shows, although Marvel characters, were made under Netflix's studios. And Disney, the company, knows this. It's why Marvel and Star Wars are producing the most content and have had the most name-dropped things, because these are what the people actually want to see. With Disney, every once in a while, you get the water guy from The Good Dinosaur. But then you gotta fire him, because he doesn't support killing children. And that's controversial.